Okay, everyone, thank you so much for being here at Laetro's GenAI Club. Today, our host is Justin, and he is going to show us. I wrote this as like how to use GenAI more as an assistant than like a copywriting machine, but I believe Justin's exact words to me were how to use AI to write without using it to write. So, yeah, I will go
Yeah.
ahead and let Justin take it away.
So it has been actually kind of a whirlwind because I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. I had this whole thing prepared. And then, of course, like yesterday, something new happens with AI. And I'm like, well, everything that I'm doing is kind of obsolete already. Um, I had a real existential crisis. And I think this is kind of almost the point of having these discussions is to, is really the main point is to talk about this. So I just want to spend a few seconds on it. With all of the stuff going on with OpenAI and the image generation stuff, it's not just the image generation stuff, it's the copy and text as well. You see everybody they're creating these images, and so I yesterday I was like, okay, well let's see. And so I just wrote a prompt and I said, create a Dyson, an ad for Dyson in the style of an old Volkswagen DDB ad. That's it. One prompt. It wrote it out. The copy was amazing. And it said, and then it said, do you want me to generate it for you? And I said, sure. And this, believe me, this has everything to do with what I'm going to talk about today. So here it was, create an ad for Dyson vacuum cleaners using the style and message of a DDB era Volkswagen printed. That's it. That's all I typed,
Hmm.
right? So it came up with this headline. Still sucks. Better than ever. That's actually pretty good for what I asked. A small Dyson vacuum. The average vacuum cleaner loses suction over time, so we built one that doesn't. Then we built it 5,127 times. We removed the bag, redesigned the cyclones, and put it all in a machine that makes dust nervous. Is it over-engineered? Maybe, but when your floors are cleaner, your air is cleaner too. Not everyone needs a Dyson, but if you like things that work, this one still does. That's just like on point. That sounds like an old Volkswagen ad, right? And then it's like, you want me to mock it up visually or try a different product tone? And there it is. So I had an existential crisis last night. I'm like, how am I going to go into this thing and teach, right? Um, and like what's going on here? And then what I kind of realized was that this is exactly the creative revolution that we've been waiting for. I know that a lot of creative people are really like, you see that and you get scared and it feels like the rug has been pulled out from under you. But realize what's happening here. Everybody's showing these ads. First of all, everyone's making print ads. Okay, who uses print ads anymore, right? Like
That was
it
something I immediately noticed. I was like, it
yeah,
does look like an older ad that I wouldn't typically see.
you're
Yeah.
right. A typical, but and maybe people will run it and stuff like that. Now, all that this means is that the bar has been risen on creativity. All that it means is really now the only thing that matters is how truly creative you are in coming up with things. Because the AI, like, it's not a matter of that's, people are saying this disrupts creative and creativity. No, it doesn't. There's a difference between creating things and being creative. And so that's kind of what I want to talk to you about because the way I use AI is I use it as a tool in order to give me more original thoughts, original thinking. I don't use it to write my copy. The reason I don't do that is because that's the one thing that I'm good at in the world. So I use AI for everything else other than the one thing that I'm good at. And what that does is it gives me this superpower to take my to to come up with ideas that AI has not yet come up with. Like, so yeah, the AI just created an amazing DDB Volkswagen style ad for Dyson. But that's already been done. And the whole point of advertising and in marketing, right, is to be doing things that haven't been done yet, right? How do we get people's attention if we're just copying everybody else? So AI can't do that. AI can help you do that, though, if you know how to use it correctly. So I'm just going to show you how I do it. Now, before I get into that, I want to like explain sort of like two things. I want to give you the history of how it happened and how I kind of like came upon this discovery, which is kind of important. The first thing is the that you have to kind of realize that you have to get like out of your mentality of trying to use AI correctly, right? That's what everybody else is trying to do. Like they're putting in like the perfect instructions in order to get the perfect thing and they get the perfect result out each and every single time. Well, that's not how creativity works. People are, and then people complain when AI makes mistakes, but they forget that the making mistake, right? They say that artificial intelligence makes mistakes, but they forget that the ability to make mistakes is what makes us intelligent and creative to begin with, right? That's actually the joy, the hallucinations, all of these things. That's where the creativity comes from. The second thing is, and I'm sorry for getting somewhat philosophical here, but I have to, is because I really don't want creatives to be afraid of AI anymore. Just remember that when somebody sees some like when somebody looks at something that AI produces and says that's creative, it's not AI that is produced anything creative. It's the person who's looking at it and says that's creative, which means that the output is only going to be as creative as the person is. So the more creative you are, the more you'll be like, that's good, that's not. So you really actually have nothing to fear when maybe in the beginning, a lot of brands are going to be like, we don't need creatives anymore. Yay, blah, blah, blah. But very quickly, they're going to come crawling back because they're going to realize that I don't have good judgment. I, I, I don't. So I need somebody's help. And this is like I said, this is every creative revolution, like in the 60s, it was television. Every creative revolution in marketing comes with a new technology and we can't fight it anymore. And I'm going to show you like why and here's how I use it. So the history of how I did this actually was I was learning in Claude. I prefer Claude, right? So here are kind of like my projects, right? I have projects for a lot of different things, right? And you can see a lot of them have names. Some of them have names of influencers, and I want to make it very clear. Again, I do not use things them to write. So you're going to see why it's ethically okay to do what I'm doing and why Danco would have zero problem doing what I'm doing because Danco doesn't want me calling him every day or texting him with problems. So what happened was is I was learning how to create projects in Claude, right? And I thought, oh, you know what would be really funny? If I created a Claude, I'm a philosopher, so I was like, if I created one of Friedrich Nietzsche, I took like a short synopsis of Nietzsche that Walter Kaufman wrote and I uploaded it. Then you can see I very loosely just started uploading like examples of like Nietzsche quotes, Nietzsche philosophy, you know, paragraphs I think at one point as much of a book as I was allowed to upload. And I just sort of uploaded all of this into the knowledge base with kind of no instructions around it or anything like that, right? And then what I did was, and I wish I could find it here. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it here. What happened is all I wanted it to do was actually write in the style of Friedrich Nietzsche, right? And which, for those of you who don't know, is like a very kind of like bold, little bit angry, little bit, you know, the struggle is the key, the will to power, like, embrace the nihilism. When you look at the abyss looks back at you. And I thought like that would be a good test if I could do it. So what ended up happening is I wrote in the instructions up here, and I always do this, create an AI that writes LinkedIn posts and tweets about marketing and advertising in the style, tone, voice, sentence structure. And then here's where it went weird. For some reason, I wrote and perspective of the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. This word here, and now I actually add things like perspective and personal philosophy of, right? This changed everything because what happened is I asked it to write a LinkedIn post about how AI is going. AI is an extension of yourself. It's not anything like bad, right? And use it. And it said I don't feel I don't want it didn't say I don't feel comfortable. He said I don't want to write about that. I would never write about that. That sounds like drip like whatever drivel. And I was like,
So
uh
I have a question. I'm so sorry.
yeah.
So you put this prompt in, but then you asked it to talk about like a certain like a
So
brand thing or like
yeah, I asked it to write about like just I said write me, a LinkedIn post. And you'll see I
and
asked
then
things to
because you used his perspective, it got a little combative, like,
yeah, it got combative and it was
okay.
like, no, I'm not I won't do that. And so then I asked it to, okay, could you please ignore ignore the perspective part and can you just at least write it in the style of Friedrich Nietzsche? And then it pumped out a post. Again, I wish I could find it here. I was looking for it, but look like I've been experimenting for so long and I can't find it. And then it pumped out a post like the most boring LinkedIn post that you could ever imagine. Like didn't sound like Friedrich Nietzsche at all. And I wrote and I said, that doesn't sound like you at all. And then it said, ah, you sense my sarcasm. Of course, it doesn't sound like me because that's not me. So it it got sarcastic. It understood the project understood the core philosophy of Nietzsche so much from the stuff that I uploaded here that it knew that that would be Nietzsche's response because indeed Nietzsche does that in his text sometimes. He'll be like or the way that somebody would write it and then writes it in a very boring fashion to make it clear that it's not his. And I was like, I remember I immediately just like backed like I was scared. I feel like this is like sci-fi. Like this is how it begins, right? Now I've just created Nietzsche. He's going to like start programming my computer and like he's gonna let out and he's gonna like start like turning like the power off in Los Angeles and all over the world in order to cause the nihilism and the will to power that he wants to create. It scared the crap out of me. I stopped and I more or less stopped. Well, you could say I didn't stop using it. Like I still go in there sometimes. Um, and but what I realized from that was, wait a second, wait a second, wait a second. If I can do that for Nietzsche, I can do that for um, I can do that for Dan Coe. I can do that for Howard Gossage. I could do that for um, John Powers, the world's first copywriter, Robert Greene, 48 Laws of Power, David Ogilvy. I could do that for Rosser Reeves, Marshall McLuhan, Dave Trott, Sam Stagg, George Carlin. I could do it for all of these people, right? And so basically what happens is a lot of times I'll have my own idea, but a lot of times also, like when I get a client, like a ghostwriting client, and they don't have a persona, I'll think to myself, well, what historical persona would they most resonate with? And I'll go to them and I'll start building that person's persona from that person. So if I like somebody who's like kind of reminds me of George Carlin, I'll go in, right? And so you can see I have very clearly here, write LinkedIn post, write LinkedIn post, write LinkedIn post. I want to make it again very clear. I'm not, the reason why I'm asking it to write LinkedIn posts about it is because LinkedIn posts are different than regular social media posts where they have because LinkedIn posts are like kind of like where people are sharing their thought leadership ideas and it forces them to do it in like 3,000 characters. So what I do is when I have an idea for something, I will go and I'll say, okay, like Intuit just did like I just read today. I'm just coming up with something. I read an ad age today that Intuit did a financial wellness retreat where you could go and do like meditation and this and then also like have learn how to become like better in tune with your finances and stuff. It's actually a pretty smart thing because they say that why people are bad with money is mostly psychological. So like an Intuit wants you to be better at it. So they had this wellness retreat. So let's just say I'm like I want to write about that, but I don't know, but like, I don't know, like what should I say about that? Like the thing is like these are all people whose opinions I respect. George Carlin has smart things to say, right? Bob is Bob Hoffman, Bill Bernbach, right? And so what I'll literally go in and I'll ask each one of them to write me a LinkedIn post about it. And I read all the different perspectives until I find one that's like, that's an interesting perspective, right? And then I go and I copy paste it and I put it in and then I use that and I edit around it and it's usually, something that is more or less becomes my own post, like my own style, like because I write the post myself. Or if it's for a client, it's done in their style or whatever. Um, and that's it, man. Like that's how I'm using it. Now, the one thing I'm gonna say that's also kind of cool is that I don't follow best practices when I'm making these things. What I do is so here's one that I created yesterday. So this one is um, years ago, I worked for Joe DeSena.
Justin, I'm so
Yeah.
sorry. Judy has a question.
Oh, sure.
Hey, Justin. I thought maybe just for the sake of the crowd and just in case people don't quite know what projects are, like if you could just do like a quick explanation of what a project is as opposed to like when you just use
Oh, okay. Yeah.
a chat.
Okay. I, so with the exception of that chat GPT thing that, right, created that ad for me, I never just use like the plain thing. So Claude projects are essentially Claude's version of chat GPTs. It's like creating your own personal Claude, but with a specific goal in mind. So you could see like I had other projects that were like are very much like around doing things like this was to help me study for an insurance exam. Believe it or not, I'm a licensed insurance broker. So it had like it just like it had just different things like that. So I uploaded the workbook, right, and I had it just like constantly quiz me, you know. And so you could just kind of do that.
Kind of like a
And
folder where you could put some contextual documents, right? That kind of like frames like a
yeah,
subject matter or something like that.
yeah, and you can see this is what a project looks like. And so when you're creating them, a project has two parts to it. Um, and one of them is the project knowledge base, and the other one is like the instructions, right? And so what a lot of people do is they just focus on the instructions and they just instruct it to write in a certain style. And then they upload things to the knowledge base like this is my brand identity, my voice and this and that, and like they get really really anal with the instructions, right? um what I do is I actually just come in here. So this is Joe DeSena. Joe DeSena is the CEO of Spartan Race. I worked for him once. I helped brand Spartan Race, and I've always really appreciated his sort of hard knocks mentality of like do the hard thing, you know, and stuff like that. So I'm like, oh, I don't have that persona. I mean, like Nietzsche's a little bit like that, but like I just want someone who's like very straightforward. That's like that will always give the advice about doing the hard thing. And so it'd be like really interesting, I thought, like to take certain ideas and put it in here and see what Joe has to say about it. And so what I did is I uploaded interviews with Joe. I uploaded video scripts of Joe. I uploaded like examples of his newsletter. In general, you want like 10 of whatever, right? You want 10 of each thing. And and then I just left it there. I didn't have any instructions in here or anything like that. And then I just wrote in the instructions that what it should do. Now, to do the instructions, I there's all these people, they have like cut and paste things, but what I did is I just asked Joe to write the instructions. So after the knowledge base was all there, I then what right? So now it's got like basically kind of like the way Joe thinks and writes and stuff like that. So then I asked Joe and I said, "Hey, can you write the instructions for this project so that when I ask you a question, you answer it as best as you can as Joe." And then I and then it writes it in there, and then I pretty much forget about it unless I see that it's. I once tried to create one for Brett Wilms. And now that I'm getting more stories from him, but I had very limited stories. So he likes to tell the story about his mom and the game he would play in the car. And so like every answer like every answer had that story in it. And so, like, so sometimes you have to like go in and fix it like when it gets really, really annoying. But for the most part, I just go in there and I leave it because I find that the imperfections are like awesome. Like when it kind of screws up, when it kind of answers in a way that I know Joe wouldn't, or, you know, like brings in some weird random thing or hallucinates in the way that the text ones can hallucinate, stuff like that. I actually like that's kind of like the gold for me. And so like once it's there, you know, the instructions are there. And so I can then go and be like, okay, so if we just find something about like the Intuit um, financial retreat, right? So we go here. Okay, it's not gonna find. This is not how like normally I would just do something a little bit like, right? And then it's like, um, what do you think about um, Intuit's financial retreat, right? And then it's like, here's some more info, right? And then, hmm, so there's something wrong in the instructions that I have to, again, I made this one yesterday. There you go. So he would disagree with it, right? And this gives me like a little like controversial take on it, right? This isn't any, I would never cut and paste this, put this anywhere or do anything, like that. Like again, I'm not stealing. I'm literally just using this in order to get multiple perspectives. This isn't a new idea for creativity. There's a guy here who used to make these kind of like packs, um, Roger Van Oach, like Ask the Wise Fool, and they're like these creativity card things that just like stimulate you to do different things, right? And like, rearrange the parts, you know, um,
So you're kind
play
of
around,
seeing these cards as like
play around
another
with them.
way of like showing perspective.
Yeah, and so one of them in here is um, put on somebody's head. Like he talks a lot about how when you have a problem and you can't solve it, like you, the worst thing is like to try to solve the problem, or like you need to get different perspectives. So one exercise that he always recommends doing is ask yourself how somebody else would solve, somebody from like a radically different field would solve the problem. So, okay, so you run a plumbing company and, you know, oh, your entire neighborhood, you know, was wiped out in the LA fires. Like, what do you do? So you can like sit there and of course like ask other plumbers and look at the history of the business and ask the experts, but it's also a good exercise to ask, how would Walt Disney solve that problem? How would how would a marine biologist solve that problem? How would a, right? Like just, because you never know when you, because that's what a new idea is. It's when like creativity and new ideas are when two divergent thoughts that seemingly don't go together come together,
Hmm.
right? And like the guy who basically
Hey,
invented the
Justin,
ability,
I'm so
yeah,
sorry. Can I interrupt for a second? I just
yeah.
wanted to check with anyone. Does anyone have any questions so far?
This is great. My only question, I was waiting till you're done here, Justin, is like,
Go
do you
ahead.
find that the projects are aware of each other or they're walled in?
They're walled in. They're not aware of each other. Sometimes I wish they were aware of each other. Because it would make it actually a lot easier when they were, because I could then pit them. And sometimes I have done that. Like sometimes I have done um like I'm like, well, it's like especially like Bill Burnback and Rosser Reeves. Like disagree with each other a lot. And so sometimes I'll cut and paste Bill Bernbach's answer into Walter Reeves and have Walter Reeves respond to it, right? And then they'll respond, and then I'll take that, and then I'll write like a dialogue post out of it. Now I'm going to tell you the other thing. The other thing is that, especially with the ad people that I have, like Bob Hoffman, Bill Bernbach, Sam Stagg, Trott, Rosser Reeves, right? So David Ogilvy, right? Um, Besides their philosophies about advertising and marketing, I also have their ads in the knowledge base. And so if I'm working on an actual marketing project, I will go in there and I will be like, okay, here is the brief. How would you write these ads? How would you do it? How would you go about it? And I'll ask them, even make some, write some, right? Now Claude can't do what OpenAI can do. It can't create the images like OpenAI. It doesn't have that ability. Um, and so now you see my dilemma. Like, okay, well, now OpenAI did that without me having to create any sort of project, right? But I still don't know how detailed it knows, right, about Bill Bernbach be, or even like the knowledge base, the knowledge stuff that I'm adding into the knowledge base is, again, it's stuff very personal from me. So like actually Brett has this brilliant way of kind of putting it, which is that AI, when it comes to writing, is like a sandwich. And what Brett says is that it's like the top is human, the middle part's AI, and the bottom part is human again. So the top part is like ideation and a story. Like you need to have something. You need to have an idea. You need to have write something. Then you can put it into AI. AI can do the physical writing part, but then anybody who knows anything, like Eugene Schwartz says, right, that writing is not writing. Writing is building. Writing is assembly. You don't write things. You assemble them, right? You put it you put it together. So a lot of it's in the editing, and so that's where the human part comes in again. So a really small percentage of all good AI writing is writing, um, is 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 actual AI. Most of it is human. Now the interesting thing is like that top part. It's like, okay, ideation. You need to come up with something. So AI sucks at creativity. It sucks at coming up with new ideas because it can't create anything new. All it can do is go off of what already exists. But if you treat it like a game and you let it mess up on purpose and you tell it to do things like go after a sacred cow, you tell it to do something like pivot, you tell it to do something like smell the hypocrisy, then you can start using it to help generate new ideas that even it doesn't know about. All I do is I find personas for each one of these things and separate them out and go through them one by one. So in a way, I'm creating these little mini cards, but for AI. But also, instead of them just being generic ideas, I'm having them be people with actual histories and thoughts and stuff like that. Um, I also don't change so like when David Ogilvy answers something, it'll bring up parts of like history. It's like when I first started Ogilvy, and it'll like tell a story, and it's all in there. So even if I were to take his answer and use it as a post, I would still have to go in there and remove that part and replace it with something that's about my history or this or that. So the way I do it guarantees that I always am putting much more humanity into it than just relying on the AI. Um, and I think that that's why a lot of like my LinkedIn content stands out, and I also think that's why the ads that I've been creating lately, or the marketing I've been creating lately, has been like 100 times better, because um, now all I'm doing is just accelerating my ability to unstuck myself on certain things, and you just using it as a creative tool. I'm essentially just playing with it. I'm breaking it on purpose. I'm letting it break on purpose, and then I'm doing it at an accelerated pace. And that's it. Like, I wish that this was something that was more like how, step by step, how do you do it, but I don't think that that's how us creatives should be using this tool.
Mm.
Um, now I do have one project specifically, that's me up here, that writes stuff that is 90% me. But hey, that's okay because it's me. I'm not trademarked to myself. I own myself, so I can do whatever I want with myself. I'm just accelerating. But I wouldn't be able to build this or do anything with it. Like this is years and years and years and years of me, right? This is years and years and years of me working on my own style and this and that or whatever. If I don't have my own style, if I don't have my own whatever, this means nothing, right? So like I'm perfectly fine and okay with that. And I now I actually use it just to try to maybe understand what my perspective would be because sometimes I forget what my perspective on things would be.
That's
So
cool. You can use it to self-reference like that.
what'd you say?
That's cool. You can use it to self-reference like that. And additionally, I was actually kind of curious. Can we just like mess around with one of these and like make a
Yeah, let's
LinkedIn
try
post?
it. Like this,
Okay.
let's get a topic. Pick a topic.
Oh God.
Is
I mean, I
Judy
don't know
still
if you
have?
can
But
do
she
it as
should.
me. I don't know if you do have anything close to me, so far as like personas, but like let's say I'm going to Lightbox Expo and I want to make sure, obviously that the people in my network on LinkedIn know that I'm going and that people can come around. I can give them a high five. I don't know, just to, meet with me at Lightbox if they're also coming. I want to see if I can get in-person conversion.
I would add something to that, Bianca, to make it just a little bit more juicy, is
Please.
like what are like three topics that you want to talk to creatives about at Lightbox that are going to get like really engaging conversations going. So it's not just you, it's not just the event, but like you want to show up with like cool topics.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Justin, did you get all that?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. So I'm going to start with Howard Gossage
Okay.
and say like, I'm going to Lightbox Expo. Please look up what it's about because I don't, right?
Mhm.
I want to have some stimulating thought starting convert starters to talk about. Is that what it is?
Yeah, kind of like I'm. I think it's kind of also interesting to make Claude now go to the web, right? Like it can do real-time
It can,
web
yeah,
research.
it can do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And I would
now
highlight, I would say instead of with people, I would say with creatives because everyone there is a creative.
with other creative people, I will be representing Laetro.com. Well, there. Okay. Starters in Howard Gossage style for your right. So oh, so I don't know why it's putting it into a LinkedIn post view, but see, this is what I mean. It's doing this, but who cares, right? Like, okay, let's see. Um, LinkedIn, our advertising industry has managed a marvelous feat convincing talented artists that their creativity is something to be sliced and diced and sold. I'll be at Xbox this year, not to marvel at the sausage factory, but to meet the actual humans. You see, um, no. Okay. So now I'm just going to be like, um, actually, you know what? I can do it this way. That's great, but I was just curious to ask you, as Howard Gossage, can you give me some advice of some things to bring up in conversation that would get people talking, period? In other words, if you were to go there and walk around and network and talk to people, what are some of the topics you would just start bringing up? So if you know anything about Howard Gossage, these questions are actually very, very Gossagey. Do you find yourself making different work when you know it's for yourself versus when it's for a client? Have you ever noticed how the most memorable characters tend to be flawed in interesting ways? Yet corporate clients always want perfect, inoffensive advertising. Like, I'm fascinated by the animation that never gets
Yeah,
made.
I actually really like number 8 because I think a lot of people there would have experience with like, I made like 10 different characters for this show and they like took one and then there's like a third of what I created like in that character that's actually on the show.
Yeah. There you go. And here's like another one. The real tragedy isn't that AI might replace artists, it's that most creative work today already looks as though it came from a machine. Right? Like, and so if you know anything about Howard Gossage, like Howard Gossage was a guy in the 60s who he worked in advertising and he hated advertising. Right? So you can see like a lot of this is that. Now see here's what I do because like it took a little bit of time to get here. So I'm like, I want to ask other famous ad people this question. Can you write the prompt so that it better gets to the answer that I'm looking for faster, which is I'm really looking to see how you, as the persona of the project, would answer the question and actually give me advice as that persona. Now I just speed it up. Oh, so he's just answering it again. Okay, so never mind. Let's just see. I do this on purpose though. Like I'm not using it perfectly because I'm getting better. I'm getting better and more interesting answers this way, right? So okay, so there's number 8. So then I would cut and paste that number 8, right? Now let's ask somebody else. Like now let's go and ask. Oh, how do I turn this off? Sorry, I'm not used to doing it as a demo. Now let's ask. Where are you? Let's ask Bill Burnback. Hey, Bill. Period. I'm going to the Lightbox Expo. Period. And I'm going as a representative of laetro.com. I'm looking for topics that I can bring up with other creatives in order to engage in stimulating conversation. Period. Thought starters, icebreakers, etc. Period. Can you give me some interesting topics to talk about there based on your experiences in advertising? Period. Please answer as David Ogilvy. Yeah. So the great thing is that it'll fix that automatically. Oh, sorry, as Bill Burnback. I'm in Bill Burnback. So, okay, never mind. Looking for engagers, here are some thought-provoking conversation starters and timeless advertising on creators. You know what's interesting about our industry? We talk endlessly about creative freedom, but the most powerful work comes from creative discipline, finding that perfect balance between wildly imaginative thinking and laser on technology. I'm fascinated by how we navigate the technology revolution while staying connected to the human truth. All these new tools and platforms are exciting, but do you ever worry we're becoming too enamored with the delivery? Playing it safe is often the riskiest move in creative work. I mean, so like here you go. Like it's just
Yeah,
tons and tons of
lots of things to start with. I like this as well because it's like if, for instance, I were to use this exact chat or this exact project and go to Lightbox, like I obviously could use these conversation starters that way, but also just with this the way it is now, this is something I could use to begin, like for instance, a LinkedIn post to just, even if it was brief, like 4 to 6 sentences, be like, hey, I'd love to talk to you guys about this when I'm at Lightbox.
Now, here's an interesting person to ask this question to, right? Robert Greene, who's the author of 48 Laws of Power. So he literally, right? He literally is like teaches you how to, he wrote a whole book about seduction, which I think I have in here too. Like, a whole thing about like how to get people to like you. He's basically the Dale Carnegie of today, but a lot more Machiavellian. So let's just see what he says. Look at this. Look at this. Network strategy tips. Observe before engaging. Create memorable impressions. Have a concise and compelling way to describe what Laetro.com does. Share unique perspective or insight, right? Rather than trying to meet everyone, focus on making fewer but deeper connections. Consider which relationships would be most valuable. Influence is achieved through genuine interest, right?
So we still have 7 minutes, but I did just want to check in again to see if anyone had any questions. Yeah, Maggie.
I do. Hi. I'm just wondering, because I literally just signed up for Claude now because I don't really use Claude. What link, like I noticed at the bottom it says like Claude 3.7 Sonnet. Like, what's your preferred LLM? Is there like a strategy for which one you choose? Or like you're just like, whatever. Oh, it's the most intelligent model yet. Okay, that's why.
That's the one I use. Whatever one.
Okay.
And then when that runs out, then you can go to the lower one and the lower one. Again, like to me, the it screwing up is better than anything
Okay,
else.
yeah. Mhm. Okay, that's good to know. We don't want it to be perfect. Okay, thank you.
I don't, like personally, like I don't. Because I'm using AI as a not to create things for me, but I'm using it as a tool to stimulate my creativity. So if it just gives me the answer that I want, that doesn't help me. Like I want it to mess up, I want it to hallucinate, I want it to do these things. And it's like, oh, I made a champagne ad, but and I asked it to sip the champagne, and then all of a sudden it created like this image of like a person sipping a champagne bottle with a straw, by like because it like misinterpreted what I said. But I look at that and I'm like, huh, that's a that's actually a cool image. That's how creative ideas happen in the real world anyway, right? Now it can just happen at scale if you just purposefully ask it for random stuff or just like let it make those mistakes. So now you have this image of a person sipping a straw. Now, so now you can either like take that image, make it better, work with the AI to make it in the style that you want, or go to Photoshop, do it yourself. It doesn't matter at that point, right? That the hardest part is done, right? The hardest part is making an image that no one would have thought about before. Like not even like AI didn't think about that. It just misinterpreted your interpretation, right? And so just think about what that can do for you. And I think that this is just like for all the creatives that are just like afraid of AI and like it's going to take my job. I think once you begin to see it this way, you begin to understand, oh, wait a minute, this is actually my legal, like as Bill Bernbach would say, this is like the last legal unfair competition I have over my competition, right? Like, because if I'm a good creative person, this just like accelerated my ability to be more creative. Forget about the production stuff. That's over. That's done, right? If all you ever did was just produce what other people wanted, you're done. You're toast, right? But if you're actually a creative person with real ideas, that's all that's left now. That's all that's left. And so use the AI to obviously produce things quicker, but use the AI to come up with better and more creative ideas faster because that's all that's going to matter.
Thank y'all so much for being here. Justin, it was really wonderful to like see Claude in action and to see how you've like I know you said you don't really like stick to best practices, and I feel like there are best practices and there's a use for that. But I also think that it's like the experimentation is really key during this time. Just
Yes.
being like, well, I'm just going to go by personas and see what happens. That I feel like it's really that element right now of like, if people in the very least, like maybe they're not going to use it, maybe they will, but if they just want to see how it works, taking like how you already think and using that as the guide. And Justin, I know you're like a history, marketing history buff. And so like that's like part of your like perspective and being like, that's how I'm going to approach this. So it was very cool to see. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I wouldn't say like I use David Ogilvy and all these people because I can put like avatars and philosophies behind them. But like you don't have to do that. You could just make up names and say, I'm just going to make this one all about, smelling the hypocrisy. And I'm just going to say like, whatever I ask you to do, I want you to approach it in a way that where you are calling out the hypocrisy of something, right? And you just kind of like see what it does and see how it answers it and stuff like that. To be clear, some of those projects that I have are tight and follow best practices, and I could teach you that all day long. But that you honestly you can ask Claude or you can ask ChatGPT to do that for you. You don't even need to learn how to do that. Like you just ask it to do it and it will do it for you. And so like, and that's just when you're ready to produce something and pump it out there. Like that's it. That's the easy part. The hard part is now coming up with original stuff, which is more important than ever. Creativity, like this AI, I'm just telling you guys, AI is not your enemy, it's your friend. It really is. It's just this tool. You could be 10 times more creative with it. This is the creative revolution right here. Like this tool.
Okay.
Just
Thank
use
you
it
for
creatively.
Absolutely. Thank you for those parting words, Justin, and everyone. Again, thank you for coming, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so
No
much.
problem.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.